The first time you press buy, you're not really stepping into the market the way you think you are. You're not entering some open field where everyone has an equal shot. You're paying for someone else to get out. And what makes this so dangerous isn't the mechanics, it's the feeling. Because it doesn't feel like a mistake. It doesn't feel reckless. It feels clean. It feels logical. It feels like progress. Like you're finally doing something real, something that might actually change things for you. And right there, in that exact moment, when your finger is hovering over the button, there's already someone on the other side of that trade. They're not guessing. They're not reacting to the market the way you are. They're reacting to people like you, to your timing, to your decision, to that exact moment where everything feels right to you. Because the market isn't really a place where money magically appears. It's a system where money moves from people without structure to people who spent years building one. And if you've ever taken a trade that felt perfect, if you've ever looked back and thought, how did that go so wrong? Then you already know that feeling, that confusion, that quiet frustration where nothing seems to add up. This video is for you. So if any part of that sounds familiar, make sure you subscribe. Because what you're about to see isn't just another explanation. It's a different way of looking at everything you've been doing up to this point. And the strange part is, no matter who you are, it almost always starts the same way. When most people step into the market for the first time, they carry this simple belief in their head. If I'm right, I make money. If I can just figure out the direction, if I can just read the chart correctly, then I win. It sounds reasonable. It feels logical, almost too logical. And that's exactly why it traps people. Because in the beginning, nothing feels random. You open a chart, and your brain starts connecting dots immediately. It went up yesterday. It's bouncing off a level. People are talking about it. It's trending. Everything lines up just enough for your mind to say, this makes sense. And when you finally act on it, when you stop watching and actually take the trade, it feels like a step forward, like you've crossed some invisible line. You're no longer just observing. You're participating. You're in the game now. But what you don't realize yet is that feeling right and actually being right are two completely different things. The market doesn't reward confidence. It doesn't care how convincing your reasoning sounds in your own head. It doesn't care how clear the setup looks. In fact, the clearer it feels, the more dangerous it usually is. Because the moment something looks obvious, the moment it feels easy to understand, there's a high chance you're not seeing an opportunity. You are the opportunity. And that's the part most people never stop to question. If you can see it, if thousands of other people can see it, then who's taking the other side? Who's letting you in? Who's providing the liquidity so your order can even exist? Think about that. Who is selling to you when you're buying with confidence? Who is buying from you when you're convinced it's about to drop? And why do they seem so calm at the exact moment you feel certain? That's where the confusion really begins. Not because you're not smart enough, not because you're not trying hard enough, but because the rules you think you're playing by aren't the real rules of the game. Trading isn't about intelligence in the way most people think. It's not about who can analyze faster. It's not about who memorizes more indicators or draws cleaner lines on a chart. It's about perception. It's about how you see the same thing differently over time. It's about moving from reacting to understanding to eventually controlling how you respond. And that shift doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in one breakthrough moment. It happens in layers, in levels that most people pass through without even realizing they're stuck in one of them. Some people stay in the same level for years. They work harder. They study more. They consume more content. They try different strategies, different indicators, different time frames. But they never actually move forward because they're solving the wrong problem. So in this video, you're going to see those levels clearly. You're going to recognize where you are. And more importantly, you're going to start seeing what's been quietly holding you there this whole time. Because the truth is, the first level was never designed to make you money. It was designed to teach you how to lose it. Level 1. The illusion of control. At the beginning, it feels easy, almost too easy. You open the chart, you stare at it for a few minutes, and something inside you clicks. Not logically, not systematically, just a feeling. This looks right. You can't fully explain it, but it feels clean. The movement makes sense. The direction feels obvious. It's like your brain is filling in the gaps automatically. And when you take that trade, sometimes it works. Not all the time, but just enough. Just enough to hook you. You catch a move. Maybe it's $80, maybe $150, maybe a bit more. It's not life-changing, but it's real. It's money you didn't have because now your brain has something dangerous. Emotional proof. Not data, not statistics, not a system. Proof. You start trusting that feeling more. You lean into it. You hesitate less. You stop questioning it the way you did at the beginning. And slowly, without noticing, your behavior changes. That same instinct that gave you a small win starts guiding bigger decisions. You increase your size. You stop thinking about risk and start thinking about outcome. And when the market turns against you, it doesn't feel like randomness. It feels like something went wrong, like you misread it, not like the whole approach was flawed. So you wait. You tell yourself it'll come back. It has to come back. You've seen charts recover before. You've seen dips turn into rallies. You've seen worse setups work out. So you hold, through discomfort, through doubt, through that quiet voice in your head telling you something isn't right, but it doesn't come back. Not the way you need it to. And suddenly, those small wins that made you feel capable get erased by one loss that feels heavier than everything you gained before. That's when the illusion cracks. The illusion that you were in control, because you weren't measuring anything real. You were reacting. And confidence, without data, is just gambling dressed up as logic. Level 2, the information trap. And when that illusion starts to break, you don't stop. You pivot. You tell yourself the problem isn't your thinking, it's your knowledge. So you go looking for more. You start watching videos late at night, saving screenshots, reading threads, following traders. You open 10 tabs at once. You tell yourself you're studying, but half the time, you're just searching for something that feels convincing enough to act on. Support, resistance, RSI, MACD, breakouts, fakeouts. Your charts start looking more professional. Your explanations get smoother. You sound like you know what you're doing. And for a while, it feels like progress, like you're finally building a real foundation. But then something strange starts to happen. The more you learn, the easier it becomes to justify any trade. Not harder. You can always find a reason to enter, always find a signal that confirms what you already want to believe. You don't feel lost anymore. You feel validated. And that's the trap. Because now, every trade makes sense. And when it fails, it's confusing. Because you had logic, you had structure, you had reasons. So why did it still go wrong? And that's when the deeper truth starts to show itself. Information is everywhere, which means it's already reflected in the price. By the time you see the setup, by the time it feels clear enough to act on, it's not an advantage anymore. It's a signal. And signals are not designed to reward you. They're designed to pull you in, to make you act at the exact moment someone else needs you to. So without realizing it, you keep stepping into trades that look perfect, right when they're supposed to look perfect, for someone else to exit. Level 3, the break. And then one day, something changes. Not gradually, not subtly. It hits you all at once. You take a trade that feels different from the others. Cleaner, stronger, more certain. You've seen this pattern before. You've studied it. You've waited for it. Maybe you even passed on a few earlier trades just to wait for something like this. So, this time, you go in bigger, not recklessly, but with conviction. You even mention it to someone close to you, not like a gamble, but like something that should work. There's a tone in your voice, a quiet confidence, like you've finally figured something out. And for a moment, it plays out exactly the way you expected. Then it turns. You check your phone in the middle of the day. Maybe you're standing in line. Maybe you're about to eat. It's just a quick check. Nothing serious. But the number hits you differently this time. It's not a small dip. It's not something you can brush off. It's down a lot. More than you've ever seen before. $2,000 gone. Or close enough that your brain doesn't care about the exact number anymore. and your body reacts instantly. Your chest tightens. Your hands feel colder. Your thoughts slow down, like everything is moving through thick air. You stare at the screen, refreshing it, once, twice, like it might fix itself. It doesn't. You tell yourself to stay calm. It's just volatility. You've seen this before. But deep down, you know you haven't. Not like this. Not with this much on the line. You don't close the trade. You can't. Because closing it would make it real. It would confirm something you're not ready to accept. So you wait. You justify. You replay your reasoning over and over again, trying to convince yourself that you're still right, that the market is just temporarily wrong. But something has already shifted. This isn't a game anymore. This is personal. Because now it's not just about the money. It's about what losing it means. It's about what it says about your judgment, your discipline, your ability to actually understand what you're doing. It's about that quiet voice in your head that you've been trying to prove wrong this whole time. And from that moment on, everything gets heavier. Every decision feels loaded. Every trade carries something extra, something unspoken. You don't just want to win anymore. You need to fix something. You need to get it back. And that need quietly distorts everything. It pushes you to act faster, to take trades you normally wouldn't, to size up when you shouldn't, to chase instead of wait, to hold when you should cut. And the more you try to force it, the further it slips away, until eventually, something inside you gives. Not dramatically, quietly. You start to see it. The market isn't, but your emotions are controlling how you react to the market. And that realization, it's uncomfortable enough to force a change. Level 4. The system. You stop chasing ideas. You stop looking for the next perfect setup, the next perfect indicator, the next explanation that makes everything finally click. Instead, you look backward, at your own trades, your own history. You sit with it, really look at it, not just the wins, but everything. The entries, the exits, the timing, the hesitation, the mistakes you didn't want to admit were mistakes. And what you find isn't chaos. It's pattern, the same behaviors, repeating over and over again. Entries without structure, exits without rules. Winners cut too early, just to feel safe. Losers held too long, just to feel right. Not because you didn't know better, but because you never defined what better actually meant. Not in a way you could measure, not in a way you could repeat. And that's where something new begins. You build a system, not a perfect one, not something that guarantees anything, but something clear, something you can follow, even when you don't feel like it. You define your entry, you define your risk, you define your exit, you write it down, you track it, you start paying attention to outcomes, not emotions. And for the first time, your trading stops feeling like a series of guesses. It starts feeling like a process. And then comes a realization that changes everything, but doesn't feel dramatic when it happens. You don't need to win more often. You need to win correctly. You start to see that a strategy can lose half the time and still make money. That being right isn't about each individual trade. It's about how your wins compare to your losses over time. Risk and reward begin to matter more than prediction. And something inside you relaxes. Not because it's easier, but because it's clearer. Level 5. The boring phase. From here, progress slows down. Not in reality, but in how it feels. There are no more emotional highs. No more moments where you feel like you've cracked the code overnight. No big wins that make you feel unstoppable. Just repetition. The same setup. The same rules. The same process. And if you're honest with yourself, it feels boring. There are days where nothing happens. Days where you follow your plan perfectly and still end up with almost nothing to show for it. Weeks where your account barely moves. From the outside, it looks like you're stuck, like you're wasting time, like you could be doing something more productive. And people around you might even say that. They don't see what you're doing. They don't see the journal. They don't see the discipline. They just see someone sitting in front of a screen, doing something that looks like gambling, and it costs you something to keep explaining it. So eventually, you stop explaining. You just do the work, quietly, because you start to understand something most people never get to. Consistency is invisible while it's happening. You're not trying to win big anymore. You're trying to not lose unnecessarily, and that shift is where most people walk away, because it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like nothing. Until one day, you look back and realize things have changed. Not dramatically, but undeniably. Level 6. Scaling and reset. And then comes the next shift. You increase your size. Not impulsively. Carefully. Based on data. Based on what you've already proven to yourself over time. And suddenly, everything feels different again. Same system. And your brain reacts to that. A loss that used to feel manageable now hits harder, even if it's the same percentage. Because your mind doesn't process percentages. It processes the number. And so, emotions come back. Subtle at first. A little hesitation here. A second guess there. Then stronger. You feel the pressure again. The weight. That familiar tension creeping back into your decisions. And that's when you realize every level requires a new version of you. The control you built at a smaller scale doesn't automatically carry over. You have to rebuild it. Retrain your reactions. Normalize the new range of outcomes. Until eventually, those larger numbers feel as neutral as the smaller ones once did. And that process takes time. Longer than you expect. But it changes you. Again. Level 7. You become the market. And somewhere along that path, something deeper shifts. But how you see. You stop looking at trades as isolated opportunities. You stop thinking in terms of this one setup or this one idea. Instead, you start noticing behavior, flow, how people react, not just how price moves. You begin to recognize moments where things look perfect, too perfect, where everything lines up, the narrative, the pattern, the sentiment. And instead of feeling confident, you start to notice enthusiasm building. Right before things stall. You see fear peaking. Right before things reverse. You realize that what you used to trust as signals were often just reflections of crowd behavior. And then one day, it hits you. Quietly. The one exiting into someone else's certainty. You're not playing the game the way you used to. You are part of the structure that defines how the game works. And it doesn't feel powerful. Not the way you imagined. It feels quiet. Precise. Detached. Because you understand something now that you couldn't have understood before. Every clear opportunity exists for a reason. And most of the time, that reason isn't you winning. At some point, after enough trades, enough losses, enough moments where you were certain and still wrong, something inside you stops searching. You stop looking for the answer. Because you realize there isn't one. There's no hidden strategy. No perfect indicator. No version of you that becomes immune to uncertainty. That idea, it fades. And in its place, something simpler appears. And far more uncomfortable. You don't win because you figured it out. You win because you stop doing what makes you lose. The mistakes don't disappear overnight. They shrink. They happen less often. They cost less when they do. You start catching them earlier. The urge to hold too long. The temptation to size up too soon. The need to be right. They're still there, but they don't control you anymore. And that's the shift. Not from losing to winning, but from reacting to managing. The people who make it this far, they're not smarter. They don't see the market more clearly than everyone else. They just stayed long enough and adjusted enough to let the noise fall away. While everyone else was chasing certainty, they learned how to operate without it. And that's when the final realization settles in. The market never changed. It never became easier. It never started making more sense. It was always this way. Complex, uncertain, indifferent. The only thing that changed was you, your rules, your reactions, your tolerance for risk, the way you think when you're in a trade, and more importantly, the way you think when you're wrong. And once you see that clearly, everything else becomes quieter. Because success here was never about predicting what happens next. It was about building a structure that still works, even when you don't know. And that is why most people never make it this far. If you step back and look at the whole journey, it was never about one trade. It was never about one strategy. It was never about one moment where everything suddenly makes sense. It's a progression from chaos to awareness, to structure, to control. And while you've been moving through those stages, something else has been happening in the background. Every single day, someone new opens an account. They come in with the same belief you once had, the same confidence, the same feeling that this might be the thing that works. And most of them will repeat the same cycle, not because they're incapable, but because they don't realize they're repeating it. So the real question isn't whether you can make money, it's where you are. In that cycle, are you actually learning, or are you just reliving the same lesson in a different form? Because trading was never about predicting the market, it was about changing the way you think. Until you're no longer the one being used by it, if you can recognize the level you're in right now, comment it below. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next video, we're going to break down exactly how to move out of it.